A residential surveillance camera. Overhead angle capturing a quiet suburban driveway and front entrance. Timestamp burns in the corner, September 18, 2024. Mid-morning. Early autumn in Charlotte, North Carolina. Leaves just starting to turn. Temperature mild. The kind of day where nothing bad is supposed to happen. What you're watching is a delivery driver doing her job, accepting what appears to be a simple act of kindness from a lonely elderly woman. It would be the last decision she ever made. The footage shows typical suburban scenery. Manicured lawn. Bright yellow mums planted in a perfect circle near the walkway. White delivery van parked at the curb with driver's door hanging open. A delivery driver approaches the house, carrying a small package. Standard work uniform. Moving efficiently, she's got a route to finish. Elderly woman answers the door before the driver can even ring the bell. Like she'd been waiting, watching through the window. They exchange words. Audio quality too poor to catch the conversation. But body language tells the story. The elderly woman gestures inside. Inviting gesture. Welcoming. The universal, please come in motion. The driver hesitates. You can see it, that split-second calculation everyone makes. Polite to accept or safer to decline. Then accepts. Follows the woman through the doorway. Door closes behind them. That delivery driver was Sarah Whitmore. 31 years old. Worked for a major package delivery service, steady income, benefits, the kind of job that pays the bills while you figure out what's next. The elderly woman was Dorothy Langford, 70 years old. And Sarah Whitmore would never walk out of that house alive. When Sarah didn't return home that evening, her roommate assumed she'd picked up extra shifts. Sarah frequently worked late, covering routes for other drivers, collecting overtime to pad her savings account. But when Sarah didn't come home the next day, didn't answer calls, didn't respond to texts, her roommate contacted Sarah's supervisor. The supervisor pulled up Sarah's delivery scanner data. The device tracks every package scanned, every delivery confirmed, every stop completed. Sarah's last confirmed delivery, 10:47 a.m. September 18th. Address, 2847 Maple Drive. Dorothy Langford's residence. Every single delivery after that? Unconfirmed. Scanner goes dark. Sarah's van was located 3 blocks away. Parked on a side street. But packages still stacked inside untouched. September 20th. Police knock on Dorothy Langford's door. Dorothy answers. Seems confused about why officers are standing on her porch. They ask about a delivery driver who visited 2 days prior. Dorothy's response, yes, a young woman delivered a package. Dorothy invited her inside for coffee as a thank you. The driver accepted. Stayed approximately 15 minutes. Then left. Officers ask permission to search the house. Of course, I have nothing to hide. They find Sarah's body in a storage closet off the basement, wrapped in plastic sheeting. Dorothy Langford arrested immediately. During interrogation, she displays no emotion, no remorse, no distress. Admits to everything. She'd put drops of antifreeze in Sarah's coffee. Ethylene glycol, sweet-tasting, odorless, and in sufficient quantities, lethal. Sarah drank the coffee. Chatted politely with Dorothy for several minutes. Then began feeling ill. Dorothy offered to let her lie down. Sarah followed Dorothy to what she believed was a guest room. By the time Sarah realized something was catastrophically wrong, she was too weak to fight back. Too disoriented to reach her phone. Too compromised to call for help. Dorothy watched her die over the course of several hours. Then wrapped the body. Hid it in the storage closet. Dorothy then took Sarah's keys from her bag. Drove Sarah's delivery van 3 blocks away. Parked it on a side street where it wouldn't immediately draw attention back to her residence. Locked the doors. Walked back home. Entire process, under 20 minutes. Dorothy understood that a delivery van idling in front of her house for days would trigger questions. Moving it bought her time before anyone came looking. When detectives pressed for motive, why kill a random delivery driver? Dorothy's answer chilled the interrogation room. She killed my grandson. She deserved to die too. The connection between Dorothy Langford and Sarah Whitmore wasn't immediately obvious to investigators. They lived in different neighborhoods across Charlotte. No mutual friends. No shared workplaces. No apparent intersection in their lives whatsoever. But detectives kept digging. And they found the thread. 3 years earlier, Sarah had briefly dated a man named Connor Langford, Dorothy's grandson. The relationship lasted less than 2 months. Sarah never met Connor's extended family. Never visited his grandmother's house. Never even knew Dorothy existed. But Dorothy had known about Sarah. And Dorothy had been waiting. Connor Langford died by suicide October 2021. 28 years old. Battled bipolar disorder and chronic depression for most of his adult life. In and out of treatment facilities for years. Multiple hospitalizations. Struggled maintaining relationships or steady employment. His family understood he was fragile. Knew he needed ongoing support. But they also recognized Connor was an adult making his own choices. Sometimes those choices pushed people away. August 2021. Connor met Sarah through a dating app. They went out a few times. Sarah found Connor charming initially. Funny. Attentive. Good conversationalist. But within weeks, the relationship became suffocating. Connor texted constantly. Wanted to see Sarah every single day. Got visibly upset when she didn't respond immediately. Made serious comments about their shared future after only a handful of dates. Sarah recognized the warning signs. Tried ending things gently. Connor didn't accept it. Kept calling. Kept appearing at locations he knew she frequented. Kept insisting they were destined to be together. So Sarah did what many people do when a relationship turns uncomfortable and the other person refuses to accept rejection. She blocked Connor on every platform. Social media. Everything. Complete digital cutoff. For Sarah, it was self-preservation. Boundary setting. Protecting her peace. For Connor, it was the final rejection he couldn't metabolize. Connor spiraled quickly after Sarah blocked him. Friends reported he became fixated on the relationship. Convinced himself Sarah was the singular person who could fix him. That without her, he had no viable future. His family tried intervening. His mother urged him to resume therapy sessions. Dorothy, his grandmother and the person Connor felt closest to in the world, told him there would be other relationships. Other chances at happiness. Connor didn't believe it. October 12, 2021. He wrote a note blaming Sarah for his decision, saying she'd abandoned him when he needed her most. Then he overdosed on medication he'd been stockpiling. Dorothy found the note. Police reviewed it during their investigation but didn't pursue any action against Sarah. Connor's death was ruled a suicide. His note, the product of a troubled mind searching for someone to blame. Sarah was never contacted. Never knew Connor had died. Never saw the note. But Dorothy kept that note. And she let it fuel something dark inside her. If you're wondering how grief can twist into something unrecognizable, subscribe to The Last Moment. Because what Dorothy does next proves that the most dangerous people are the ones who've convinced themselves their violence is justified. Dorothy Langford had raised Connor after his parents died in a car accident when he was 9 years old. She'd been his guardian, his parental figure, his entire world. And Connor had been hers, her only grandchild. The center of her life after retirement left her days empty and her social circle shrinking. When Connor died, Dorothy didn't just grieve. She became consumed by rage toward Sarah, the woman Connor had blamed in his final words. Dorothy convinced herself Sarah was responsible. That if Sarah had just given Connor another chance, just been kinder, just understood how desperately Connor needed her, he'd still be alive. It didn't matter that Connor's mental illness had predated Sarah by years. It didn't matter that his suicide resulted from years of untreated trauma and chemical imbalances in his brain. Dorothy needed someone to blame. And Connor had given her a target in that final note. For nearly 3 years, Dorothy carried that rage. Let it ferment into something poisonous. She learned everything she could about Sarah. Where she worked. Where she lived. Her daily routines. Her habits. She discovered Sarah had taken a job as a delivery driver. And Dorothy noticed Sarah's route occasionally brought her through Dorothy's neighborhood. So Dorothy started ordering packages. Small items. Frequent deliveries. Always hoping Sarah would be the one to bring them. And eventually she was. The residential security camera that captured Sarah entering Dorothy's house that early autumn day became the prosecution's cornerstone evidence. The footage proved Sarah had no reason to suspect danger, had accepted what appeared to be a genuine gesture of gratitude from an elderly customer, had walked into that house willingly with zero awareness she'd been lured there by someone plotting her murder for years. Security cameras from neighboring properties revealed Dorothy had been tracking Sarah's deliveries for weeks leading up to September 18th. Watching, waiting, calculating. When Sarah appeared on the street that morning, Dorothy was ready. She'd prepared the poison coffee in advance. She'd cleared the storage closet. She'd planned every detail, including how she'd dispose of Sarah's van to delay discovery. Dorothy's trial began January 2025. Prosecution presented a case of premeditated murder driven by misplaced blame and grief that had mutated into something monstrous. They showed the security footage, presented Dorothy's internet search history, full of queries about Sarah's work schedule and antifreeze poisoning methods. Played recordings of Dorothy's confession where she displayed zero remorse. Defense tried arguing diminished capacity due to age and grief. Painted Dorothy as a heartbroken grandmother who'd never recovered from losing the child she'd raised. Suggested she'd experienced a psychotic break. That she hadn't fully understood her actions. But prosecutors presented evidence of extensive planning. Dorothy had been ordering packages specifically to increase the probability Sarah would deliver to her address. She'd researched lethal antifreeze dosages. She'd practiced her invitation, rehearsed how to appear friendly and harmless. And she'd known to move Sarah's van away from her house to avoid immediate detection. This wasn't a moment of madness. This was calculated revenge executed with patience and precision. February 19, 2025. Jury convicted Dorothy Langford of first-degree murder. At sentencing, the judge handed down life without parole. Noted that Dorothy had weaponized a position of apparent vulnerability, a friendly elderly woman inviting someone in for coffee, to commit a cold-blooded killing. Sarah Whitmore's family was devastated not just by her death, but by the absolute senselessness of it. Sarah had done what countless people do when a relationship becomes uncomfortable. She'd established boundaries, protected herself. Standard self-preservation. The relationship with Connor had been brief, insignificant in the context of Sarah's broader life. She'd moved on, built a career in logistics with decent pay and benefits, had other relationships, was planning her future. She'd never known Connor died, never knew his grandmother blamed her, never had any reason to fear the elderly woman who invited her in for coffee that September morning. At Dorothy's sentencing hearing, Sarah's mother delivered a victim impact statement that brought the courtroom to silence. "My daughter died because she went on a few dates with someone who couldn't handle rejection. She died because his grandmother decided Sarah was responsible for his choices. Sarah didn't even remember his last name. That's how little impact he'd had on her life. And she died for it." Dorothy, given the opportunity to speak, offered no apology. Connor loved her. She threw him away. Someone had to make her pay. The case raised disturbing questions about the dangers delivery drivers face daily. Sarah had entered thousands of homes during her career, almost always without incident. But she'd had no way to know that one seemingly harmless invitation would be fatal. Delivery companies across the country began revising safety protocols. Some implemented systems where drivers could signal distress if they entered a residence. Others established strict policies against accepting invitations into customers' homes. But the reality is that delivery drivers operate in a space between trust and vulnerability. They approach strangers' homes dozens of times a day. Most interactions are routine. Occasionally customers offer water on hot days. Try to engage in friendly conversation. Express gratitude for the service. How can a driver distinguish between genuine kindness and something sinister? Sarah couldn't. She'd made a choice to be polite, to accept what seemed like a sweet gesture from a woman who appeared harmless. And it killed her. Security footage from the neighborhood over the preceding weeks showed Dorothy's pattern. Watching for Sarah. tracking her movements, waiting for the right moment. On 3 previous occasions in late summer, Sarah had delivered to Dorothy's address. Each time Dorothy came to the door but didn't extend an invitation. She'd been waiting for a day when Sarah seemed less rushed, more likely to accept. September 18th was that day. Sarah's route had been light that morning. When Dorothy invited her in, Sarah had the time to say yes. Connor Langford's suicide note, the one that had started Dorothy's obsession, was entered into evidence during the trial. In it, Connor blamed Sarah for his pain, said she'd abandoned him when he needed her most, claimed she destroyed his hope for the future. Mental health experts testified that Connor's note was typical of someone in severe emotional distress looking to externalize responsibility for internal pain. Sarah wasn't responsible for Connor's death. Connor's untreated mental illness, his history of trauma, his brain chemistry, those factors had been present long before he met Sarah. But Connor had needed to blame someone, and Sarah was convenient, and Dorothy had taken that blame and run with it, turning her grandson's misplaced anger into her own mission of vengeance. The prosecutor asked during closing arguments, "How many brief relationships do we all have that end because we're not compatible? How many people do we date for a few weeks before realizing it's not working and moving on? Do any of us deserve to die because someone we briefly dated couldn't handle rejection?" The jury's answer was clear. Sarah Whitmore had done nothing wrong. She'd protected herself from an intense, overwhelming relationship. She'd set boundaries. And she'd died because someone decided those boundaries were unforgivable. Dorothy Langford is incarcerated at a women's correctional facility in North Carolina. At 70 years old, life without parole means she'll likely die in prison. She's filed no appeals. In letters she's written to family members still on the outside, she maintains she did what needed to be done. That Connor's death required an answer. That Sarah got what she deserved. The letters show no remorse. No recognition that her actions were wrong. Just a grandmother's twisted love for a grandson who's been dead for nearly 4 years. And a conviction that revenge was justified. Sarah Whitmore's family established a foundation in her name, focused on safety for gig economy workers, delivery drivers, rideshare drivers, anyone whose job requires them to enter strangers' spaces. They push for better safety protocols, panic button systems, education about recognizing danger signs. The delivery company Sarah worked for implemented new policies after her death. Drivers are now instructed never to enter a customer's residence. Water or coffee offered at the door is acceptable. Crossing the threshold is not. The policy is absolute. But enforcement is difficult. Drivers who feel pressured by friendly customers, who want to be polite, who've been conditioned to see elderly people as harmless, they still sometimes say yes to invitations. Training materials now include Sarah's case as a cautionary example. The house where Sarah died was sold by Dorothy's family after the conviction. New owners didn't learn about the murder until after closing. They've since moved out, unable to live in a space where someone was poisoned and left to die in a storage closet. Connor Langford is buried in a cemetery outside Charlotte. His grave marker makes no mention of suicide, just lists his birth and death dates. Dorothy used to visit every week before her arrest. She'd talk to Connor, tell him about her plans for Sarah, promise him that justice was coming. After Dorothy's conviction, Connor's grave went unvisited for months. Eventually, distant relatives started maintaining it. They leave flowers occasionally, but they don't talk about Connor much. His death was tragic. What his grandmother did in his name was worse. Sarah Whitmore would be 33 now. Her family says she'd probably have moved on from delivery work by this point. Was planning to go back to school. Wanted to do something in social work or counseling. She'd been saving money, building up financial stability, making plans, building toward a future. That future ended in Dorothy Langford's living room on an autumn morning over a cup of poison coffee. Because Sarah had briefly dated someone 3 years earlier and protected herself when that relationship became uncomfortable. At Sarah's memorial service, her mother said something that stayed with everyone who attended. Sarah died doing her job. She died being polite. She died because someone convinced themselves that a 2-month relationship from years ago deserved a death sentence. And she died never knowing any of this was coming. The cruelty of that last part, that Sarah had no idea Dorothy existed, no idea Connor had died, no idea she'd been blamed or that someone was planning to kill her, haunts everyone who knew her. She'd walked into that house thinking she was sharing coffee with a kind woman. She died not understanding why. This is the last moment, where the cameras capture the danger you never saw coming. If someone makes you uncomfortable in a relationship, you have the right to leave. You have the right to block them, to protect yourself, to say no. You are not responsible for how they handle rejection. And if you're a delivery driver, trust your instincts. Politeness is not worth your life. If this case changed how you think about everyday interactions with strangers, hit that like button. Subscribe to The Last Moment so you never miss another investigation into the threats hiding behind ordinary moments. Share this video, because somewhere right now, a delivery driver is being invited inside by someone who seems harmless. Someone is setting boundaries with a person who won't accept them. Someone is ignoring that uncomfortable feeling because they don't want to seem rude. Comment below, have you ever accepted an invitation you regretted? What made you say yes when your gut said no? Sarah Whitmore died because she was polite. Because an elderly woman seemed safe. Because 3 years earlier she'd protected herself from an overwhelming relationship and someone decided that protection deserved a death penalty. Remember her name. Remember that not all danger announces itself. The most dangerous people are often the ones who look the least threatening. We'll see you in the next one.